capitalism, all of the gains in automation, it goes to the owner class. All you have to do is have everyone be an owner, and now suddenly any gain in automation is a gain for everybody. If you grow just one thing, it may not grow as well as if it grows with another thing. A good example of that is called the Three Sisters method of farming.
There is definitely multi apartment buildings or multifamilies that do passive design.
$100 million that they gave to Joe Rogan that they would kind of be out if they breach contract. Is that a bigger number, or is 2 billion a bigger number?
I don't know,
It's a
Zach.
tough
This
one, I
is
know,
really hard.
and maybe
Yes.
comparing numbers is not Jeremy's strong suit. Gotta go kill a Jenny.
I still don't think you should kill her.
Hello and welcome back to Bread Theory. I'm your host Zach. Joining me as usual is Dan Platt of the Albany County Green Party. How you doing tonight, Dan?
I'm good. I wish I could bring more energy. Maybe I need cocaine or just coffee because I never drink coffee. Maybe coffee would have the same effect. Uh, that's what I'm afraid of. But otherwise, chugging along. I'm both sort of nervous, or I mean, I think it's other things that make me anxious. But the clock is ticking on my, needing to kickstart, get my campaign going. And but we're putting the pieces together. My manager is kind of stepping up more. I think he's almost done with his house renovation. He says he's not done yet, but he seems to be. He seems to know the fire is on. That we only have about a month and counting until petitioning starts. So I was relieved learning, or looking up again that it starts April 15th and not like April 1st. I think if it was April 1st, I'd be panicking. Um,
Yeah.
since we have 3 weeks, but one of those weekends before petitioning starts is Passover, so it's like, well, we can't do a kickoff party then. I got Seder's to do.
What can
Unless
you
I
do?
make the Seder the kickoff party, but that doesn't make sense to me.
Maybe mixing
That
things you don't want to
that makes no sense.
mix up.
It's not. There's no theme. I mean, yeah, no, the theming's off. Especially since but things are coming together. I've got a few more guys who are ready to work together, or at least get involved. So until in the same way that it kind of took 2 months for my manager to sort of kind of kick it up a notch,
Sure.
I think the other two will be the same. The other two had a death in the family, so he had to deal with that, and or process. And he also has all his own stuff. He just sort of said like, "Well, I can help you with a fundraiser," because he knows how to do fundraisers. So it's like I'm really
Okay.
happy you said you help
That's
out
cool.
with that because you know what you're doing. Um, although I'm not getting regular text from him, so it's like maybe I need to bump him about like, "Hey Lex, are you working with?" I
Yeah.
have to trust they are. There's certainly Andrew says he's reaching out. I just hope it's just not only him, that he's getting
Right.
uh, Lex and now
Getting a team
Jeremy.
together.
But Jeremy is stepped up because he's doing a monthly brunch basically to build community, and just sort of cope. But it's just like, hey, if you're having a rough time in these
That's
dark
nice.
days, let's have a monthly brunch of friends and left leaning people.
Sure.
And I went to his first one in January. I will go to another one soon enough. But oh, so many options. But like the last 2 weekends, I've sort of kept to myself. It was St. Patrick's Day, but I didn't do anything. Even though there was a kind of Palestinian rights contingent marching in the parade,
Mm,
I totally forgot that would probably be a thing. But I wasn't reached out and I wasn't told, so I'm
so
just
you messed it up.
I wasn't asking either, so I was already kind of set. And
Sure.
no, I need to stay home and work on stuff like cleaning my house so I can feel like I could have a house party in the next month or so, regardless of whether my housemate's out or not. But I did clean up quite a bit. Um, then I cleaned up. I kind of not finished, but I finished pruning the lilac bushes in my backyard and putting down tarps because I have a shitload of tarps left over from Occupy of all things.
Oh yeah,
I knew it was a good idea grabbing
Those
all of
tarps all that time.
all those tubs from the Occupy office filled with tarps and banners and things.
There you
Now I can use it to kill all the ivy in my backyard.
Hey,
But
in clutch.
so it'll cover. I got half of it covered now, and I guess
Nice.
a few months. If you have experience in this, is it only for 3 months or?
You'll know
How
when
long?
things are ready. It'll just be a barren waste
Yeah.
underneath it. So
I mean, I sort of when there was my smashed canoe was laying on ivy and everything died, but I'd had it in one place for the whole year. I don't know when
Yeah.
it was dead. I looked
mean-
up and one article mentioned 3 months, but it
Yeah.
was the only article. The rest were basically talking about killing ivy with a vinegar mixture with salt, and I'm like,
you definitely don't want the salt. You can get some pretty strong vinegar. There's like agricultural grade vinegar, which you don't want to mess around with. Like, don't get it on you at all. But it will kill, and it's not going to linger in the soil. So you could
Okay.
do that. You could always use boiling water too. That kills pretty much everything it touches. It's kind of tedious, but
yeah, to bring a pot at a time.
Yeah, right.
I guess maybe for those stubborn
it does it.
areas
Yeah,
that
sure.
the tarp really can't cover. But I got
Right.
some cardboard boxes too to put down.
Yeah, that'll be helpful.
And thanks to all of the pruning, I have all these branches that I've cut up, and so now I have all these things to put down on the tarps to weigh it down. So
Cool. Yeah, I mean the big determining factor is just how sunny the area is. The more sun, the more it's going to zap all the living stuff underneath it.
okay, yeah. Well, the thing is that the ivy was growing. It started underneath the lilac and other bushes, and then it was slowly growing out with the bushes, and now
So
it's sort
it'll
of
still smother it, but
it's a shady yard. So,
Yeah.
which is why it's like, I don't know how much I could grow here, but obviously there's some crops that don't need tons of sun. And probably with the kind of summers we've been having, I don't want it to be in the sun all the time.
yeah, for sure.
Um,
You're also
but-
depriving it of water though too. So that's
yeah,
another
right.
contributing factor.
I think it'll work.
But- And if it doesn't, you could always just use that cardboard and just start sheet mulching right on top of it. You layer up. You start with the cardboard. You layer up like different
mulch, yeah.
manure, compost, grass clippings, stuff like that on top of it. There's a method to it, and pretty much nothing will grow through it.
Yeah, some of the other articles talked of mulch.
Yeah,
But I don't really have ready without a truck. I could probably keep making trips to get mulch from the. Well, actually, the city has kind of been putting out on blast that's like, look, our composting facility won't be open till the middle of next month. So if you put out your yard clippings now, we can't take them yet. You
Wow.
put those out when I start petitioning, basically.
you could always scour
so-
the neighborhood for those clippings too. See if anyone.
True, take them
Can we get
before
them
the
all?
city does. I
Yeah,
guess.
exactly.
Hmm.
Why not?
Interesting.
It's an idea anyway.
Excuse me. So, what I did today was I lobbied for the New York Health Act, that's single payer health care in New York. It comes and goes, the amount of activity and the pushing the lobby for it.
Sure.
We just don't have the mass move. Like it needs to be the kind of
Why?
groundswell that we had for anti-fracking.
Sure.
People can really turn up against something, even from rural areas, when it's directly affecting them. Everyone, of course, is directly affected by the cost of healthcare and dealing with private insurance. And it's many, what's the word? Disaster? Not disaster, but depravities.
Depravities, there you go.
And so we can probably organize and rile people up for it, but like it hasn't gotten to that point. But I think, well, there's obviously the talking point of like it's starting to make people really desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things, like Luigi.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's an outlier, but it portends
For now, yeah.
it portends the overall that there was populist support for what he did, his political
Yeah.
assassination,
Yeah.
and that people do not mind talking about getting rid of private health insurance. And it's really just special interests in Albany. Sorry, I've been getting a lot of on my YouTube. It's targeted, of course. I get
Yeah.
a ton of ads in YouTube. Only when on my phone, of course. I ad blocker on my computer, but
Sure.
on my phone I don't. And it's two kinds of ads. One is this coalition against fair insurance rates. And it's the kind of ad that's like sounds like it's from a populist group, but it's really from some corporate lobbying group. It's like
Jeez.
special interest in hobby, in lawsuits raise the rights of insurance and other in taxes and fees, and New Yorkers have had enough. Join us now. And of course, it's like for some landlords group or something. They're
Right.
talking about like the other kind of ad is basically Uber. Basically, because I know like in either New York City or New York generally, that will require Uber drivers not Uber drivers, sorry, Uber the company to cover the insurance for their drivers. And they're making it sound like, rather the ad, it's one of those flips of it's the driver talking like people depend on Uber. I meet all kinds of people, and we need to keep Uber affordable. And insurance just keeps going up. And so we need to make sure that Uber stays affordable for the working people.
So we're going
And
to
my
make it
insurance costs keep going up.
harder-
I'm like, oh yeah, really? Wow.
harder for them to work as Uber drivers, and that's going to make it more affordable.
Well, Uber is clearly leaving out the fact that
Yeah.
the change will be that they have to cover the insurance and they don't want to pay.
Well, they should. They
So,
should. They screw those drivers so hard.
And any added cost will be passed on to the customer.
Of course.
And this is apparently something that's supposed to endear. Well, it worked, I guess, in the Cold War. It endears people against the government that's regulating. It's like, oh yes, this cost is imposed by this government. It's not from us.
Yeah.
Because we clearly, are breaking even. Or like that's the way they talk, like we're breaking even. And so if we have to pay for something else or control our external pollution or our externalities, then we have to pass that cost to you. Why? You're breaking even or something? And meanwhile, it's sort of scary how threadbare our civil society is. I was just in one of our church buildings in kind of on one of our main streets, but people are kind of referring to it as like a busker's neighborhood because we've got a lot of drug users. It's so strange. This is one of the more expensive neighborhoods in Albany. It's the densest, it's the most urban, and yet somehow it's also the one that's filled with drug users and drug dealers. But maybe that's because like people move and it's both slum neighborhood and ritzy, like people are well off neighborhood.
Weird.
It's such a it's not our poverty isn't ghettoized enough. It's not all in one hood or like it's the slum I guess there's enough because it's such a mix of owners that you have these upper middle class people who own buildings and own their own houses and row houses. But then all the rentals are like owned by slumlords that don't take care of the buildings. They fall apart. They don't fix anything, and they rent to, the bottom, the underclass. So it's like, it's not always the poorest people, but it's like maybe the people that have a lot of like income, and then but they're just losing it through drug use. And so it's just like, and so they're actually poor, or at least they're living poor.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's sort of like, well, I don't want to get into it. I want to keep it on the until it's resolved. But there are people who are like struggling, even though they have this attachment to living in this neighborhood, which is not the cheapest neighborhood.
No.
But somehow it is but maybe it's just not more expensive than other neighborhoods. It's actually more expensive to live in the western half of the city and not the middle here. It's sort of odd, the transformation that's occurred the last decade. It's hard to pin down when it started or why it's happening. What's the real trends here? I think maybe it tracks back to the cabaret law and how like it hurt like a lot of kind of businesses that would have music and stuff like that. So you didn't have a music scene. And so that sort of drove away. There weren't enough sort of artsy people with money to support the artists who were in the neighborhood. So now we've lost the artists. We lost the creatives that make a neighborhood worth gentrifying. And so the neighborhood's sort of in reverse gentrification. So it's on its way to being a slum because I guess all the boomers are sort of also aging out who like kind of maintain the income level. It's such a weird mix of things happening, and it's really confusing because now you have, and I think it is a matter of aging out. So the church where the bid was having their meeting, they say they only have enough money on hand for the next year. And they're like going to tell the daycare that they have in the building that they need to find a new space.
Really?
And it's a beautiful building on the inside and outside. And they're saying they're losing members. And I'm like, sure, these things can't really operate as churches anymore because there just aren't enough people who go to church and will pay to support, the fact that they only have like one part-time pastor or something. And so they barely have a staff. So it's like, but in order to really save it, it's almost like they have to transfer it to a community or some other nonprofit for nothing. Because if they have to sell the church building, then no one's going to be able to afford it. It'll end up like all the other churches in Albany that are basically ruins. Even though this building in particular is not in a place that should be a ruin. But I mean, well, every neighborhood can go into blight. I think there's no such thing as a neighborhood that's blight proof.
Sure.
Because any industry can move out, and it's just, and this
shifts.
This rose industry is the bar scene, and without the bar scene, like the number of bars has dropped precipitously. I think it's half what it used to be a decade ago.
Oh.
And you'd think like there's enough bars, and it's just a matter of like we're all drinking less. We're not going for a beer after work every day.
Just less
so
disposable income.
You have bars that and we don't have the money to spend even if we wanted to get drunk all the time. But I think there's just less of that happening. So it's like the people who are getting drunk all the time or are going for a beer are just the alcoholics. There's the casualness is still there, but it's just they're not enough yuppies.
Barflies can't support the whole thing.
Right. And there's just not enough yuppies. The supply of yuppies or hipsters is just there's not enough because the pipeline professionals is not enough. And what they're spending money on is coffee. So like we have 3 really good coffee shops.
Sure.
And so they're not going anywhere. In fact, one just moved next door across the street to fill in one of the bars. Because when the bars went under, because they were having a lot of problems, crime related as well as just mismanagement, I guess, but Cafe Hollywood it's called. And now that's out, lost its liquor license. And so now Stax, which was next across the street, moved over, and now they have twice the space. And including booths. And it's interesting because like I only gone in Cafe Hollywood one other time, and it was just for a few minutes.
Sure.
Just to,
check it out.
And this time it was to meet my campaign manager there. So, and there's another cafe that I actually thought it wasn't big enough, but it's like again another place where like the scones are $5 or something.
Oh,
and they're
wow.
not even big scones. So it's just like, no, not enough scone for what I'm going to spend on that. Even though they're really good, I'm told, but it's like, no.
So it just seems like a total mismatch. Then they have all these trappings of hipster sort of lurings, but not enough
But
of
there's
them
lots of
around.
poverty.
Not lots of
And
poverty too. Yeah.
it's an underclass strewn neighborhood.
Huh.
Not that there's tons of services, but it's just where people with some cash in their pocket move around, so you got a lot of busking happening. So there and downtown, and I think it's just because it's not so much like it's an attractor just because there's just more and more underclass people. It's increasing. Homelessness is increasing, poverty, the desperation, and social services obviously can't keep up if they ever could, or they're never meant to. It's so when I'm running for city council, it's going to come up because I mean my neighborhood is the most blighted. Even though you don't, well, you'll have but it's like where are they staying? You know, where are they moving around? It's always a kind of up in the air. It's really hard, but it's just a matter of just gearing towards what the economic floor is, what kind of businesses are you're really trying to cultivate, and it's not going to be the bougie types. It just can't be because they're not surviving. Their needs are too high maintenance. Maybe I'll phrase it that way. We need businesses that are low maintenance. We need property that's low maintenance. You know, we have a lot of high maintenance.
More car dealerships.
We
just kidding.
What?
I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I mean, it's low maintenance. You know.
Oh yeah. That's usually talked about with cars, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm talking about people as well.
No,
but,
I know.
Small business owners seem very high maintenance, and some landlords seem very high maintenance. You know, most tenants, even when they're being that they're worse, are just like, I just want to live in this place and not pay anything. And the problem with that is that buildings have maintenance costs.
Yeah.
So it's like we need buildings with lower maintenance costs. We need ways of paying your taxes so that you don't need to collect rents if that's the absolute reason why you need rent.
Sure.
And that can happen without changes in the way things work structurally. And,
sure.
And of course,
so is it an older housing stock or building stock?
Very much so. Yeah. Everything is old. Everything is 100.
A lot of brick that requires.
Yeah, I mean, everything is on average 130 years old. And that's sort of why renovating or rehabbing and maintaining is so expensive. They're all high maintenance. So there's a sort of like need to build new buildings that are like easier to maintain, but of course, there's actually not a lot of space in this neighborhood. Not mine, there's plenty of space. My third ward. I've been talking about the 6th ward, which is a very small, compact ward, which is why there's always like 6 people that are running for it in the Democratic primary, because they have all kinds of people step up when there's a vacant spot, which has happened twice, and it very quickly, because the person who won it last time just won the seat for assembly. She just skyrocketed. So like she was only in the city council for just a term, if even, which is a big criticism of her, that she's just like, she's tagged as like the up and coming like this is the person Democrats. She's like AOC, in that way. And I need to arrange a meeting to lobby her for New York Health, because she's not co-endorsed yet or co-sponsored. She just started her term, of course. Fahey, who's the senator, my senator, has been in assembly for quite a while, and thus has been a co-sponsor for a long time. So, but we need to get her on board, as fast as possible. Because we need more Dems to be not only co-sponsors but champions, to get all those other Dems who are like, apparently the lobby day efforts today were focused on the Hudson Valley folks who are more like they're in moderate, purple-ish districts. So they feel like they have to be really careful not to be perceived as going left. or too far left.
God, if there's any time to not worry about that, like maybe now,
I don't know. Well, in New York, Trump voters are Trump supporters are sort of emboldened, and they sort of look at it's odd that they're going off of polling about mood and vibes, and the vibe is like people who voted for Trump really care, and there were more people in New York this time around that voted for Trump than 2020 and 2016. So it's like conservatism's on the rise. I have to be moderate. I have to kowtow to the middle. In a very general way. But
of course,
policy by policy, everyone, it's like 68% total population supports single-payer health or single-payer health care because they know how bullshit private health insurance is. Because small business owners, even if they don't provide health insurance for their employees, they have to pay health insurance for their own selves.
Exactly.
So they want that off their back. Local governments want it off their back. It's half of their fucking expenses. Imagine how, people say New York is so overtaxed, right? And without having to pay for health care, they can all lower property taxes because it's literally a third of their expenses. And they wouldn't even have to cut all of it. They could just cut property taxes halfway, and then they have all the money needed for everything we could ever possibly want to do. Like the city of Albany will literally have like $30 million in their budget. No more gap. And we could actually fund like a whole lot of other things. Capital stuff probably. And that's the kind of thing, like, even as a city council person, I could make that my crusade, because that would basically like help everyone in my district. Even if I'm not doing city business, it's like it's the business to do the big thing that affects everything in the city, not little pieces here and there. Like that's the two kind of paths in front of me. I can make it about doing the little things and acting on the grassroots level, like really just the little things, like improve that, because we can only spend like $100 at a time, basically,
sure,
or $1,000. Or rewrite this law or update that ordinance, which is what I've been seeing my whole life. Versus just pushing for the item, like the big items. Like, because now I'm representing 6,000 people. And if everyone on the city council, like I don't know if we've done the city of Albany has a resolution for New York Health. I don't think so. I think I would have heard of it. There's tons of things where we say, well, we can't do anything about that. It's something on the state level. Okay, then we should pass a resolution saying we want the state level to do this.
State level, yeah. Do something. Don't just sit there. Oh, our hands are tied.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. How long has Massachusetts had universal health care?
No, they never had it.
Oh, I thought they did. I thought they had like a...
They had Romney Care.
I thought that was pretty close to universal health care. I mean, I don't know it that well.
No, they had Romney Care, which is what Obamacare was modeled after.
Okay. So that's not guaranteed.
It helped insure more people.
Mm-hmm.
There were more people getting insurance through the subsidies, but they're subsidizing corporate insurance.
I see. Okay.
It's not a single payer plan. It's just that more people got covered. So that's the thing where like the libs were like, okay, the goal is just to get more people insured, not to actually lower medical costs or create efficiencies or anything like that. It's just about getting more people insured. That was the main argument for the ACA. At the very least, we'll be expanding Medicare, in the states that allow it. But of course, 40 of the states didn't fucking allow it. So you congratulations. You did a quarter of a goal, which was increase the amount of insured by, 20 million people. But again, how'd you do it? By basically paying for their insurance directly in the pockets of big business.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's how Massachusetts did it. And it was a Republican bill that the Democrats made it their thing. which just shows just how it's not a matter of what the policy is; it's just who's doing it and
Sure.
whatever. It's sick to think about, of course, and a lot of people don't want to think about it that way. They do want to think about it as team sports with the teams representing certain policies, but they don't represent certain policies.
No.
They don't have real platforms. They have platitudes.
Hmm.
Green Party has a real platform. That's why I'm reading it on TikTok, line by line, which I'm getting roughly like 100 to 130 views on each
That's not
one.
bad.
It sort of peaks and then it plateaus and it doesn't grow anymore. But maybe I'm just not. I need to add 5 more hashtags, but I think there's a sort of diminishing return. I'm not getting. I've tried. I've been experimenting. Some I just add 3. Some I add 5. Some 6. I like every topic mentioned. I add a hashtag. I don't know if it really helps or not.
It's hard to tell. I mean, TikTok is supposed to be completely algo driven. But
yeah, half of them I've
knows?
added. Some I do hashtag politics, which will be like 250,000. Other posts have this hashtag, and then but if it's just politics or politics is million. TikTok politics will be like 250,000. So like I've been alternating using one or the other to see if that matters, and it doesn't seem to matter. It's very odd, or rather, using the main politics hashtag isn't making any of them blow up. Even though when I used it on, I think it's only when I post something that's like relevant to the day. So like I just posted a picture of me at the just one of the anti-Trump liberal, or the one the Democrats organized rallies, and that gets 1,000 views. It's just a picture of me, and I'm like, I don't even care if people see this, but apparently a lot of people, more did, because sometimes I know like a post is doing well when there's a few right wingers that comment. Like I'm trying to get, like, there's some guys who always troll. I don't know what the fuck that they're really wasting their life, because I'm just deleting them. I'm glad TikTok gives that option. Other networks like TikTok, Twitter, do they allow the deleting of responses? Because I can just delete comments on TikTok, and I love it, because any troll comment, like, it was I was reading the platform plank on with mentioning feminism, so I put hashtag feminism or hashtag women's reproductive rights, and this one guy comments like, "Oh, this guy, his wife he doesn't do anything without his wife say so." Just general misogyny,
stupid
crap, and I can just delete it. So he just wasted his goddamn time.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Yeah, those are never worth engaging with anyway. They're just brain dead people with no.
So here's the beautiful thing about the New York Health Act. The main kind of line of argument is like, would you rather pay $10 to the monsters at for-profit health insurance, or would you rather pay $7 in payroll tax for everything, and it's all free at point of service? So, because essentially it's paid for with payroll taxes, but it's like, well, we can't afford taxes like that. It's like, but no one will have to pay for private health insurance anymore. Do you understand what that means? It means that instead of paying $8,000 a year for substandard coverage,
that you still got to pay
with
for
premiums, with co-pays, with bullshit fees, and networks that control where you get and whether and all the rigmarole. And you just get the care.
Yeah.
And instead of $8,000, you pay $6,000 in payroll taxes.
Oh, but I don't want the government reaching into my pockets anymore.
Well, the polling we have, 68% approve. It's 55% Republican support. When told that it's paid for payroll taxes, the amount that oppose only goes up 2%. Right? Opposition goes from 13% to 15%. Otherwise, it's like support goes up to mid 60s. Another 10, 15 say, I don't know, because they're fucking stupid or something. Or they need all this explained, which is fair. But that's how it would work. It would have the rates would be set by this huge board with reps from every part of the healthcare chain. And the main and I was trying to find it, but there's this mockumentary about this guy trying to find, like, he's playing like an investigative, like connecting the strings, kind of trying to track down the conspiracy of the New York Health Act. Why doesn't this pass? It's such a no-brainer. And it's like, well, it's actually the unions. The unions are opposed, and that's why the Dems control all of New York State government. Why don't they pass it? And so, like, well, you have Dems that like still like they want to do what's best for labor. They see labor as their like main constituency, and it's labor leadership is opposed because, if I haven't explained it,
Gives them less leveraging power, right?
they think they'll give them less leverage. They believe that the only reason people, and because remember, being a union member is voluntary.
Yeah.
Even when you're public sector. So they think people will flock away from being a union member if they don't get the health insurance coverage. Even though if there's any benefit that people complain about, it's the health insurance.
Yeah.
So what they want
Sucks wherever
is
you
more
go.
vacation and better retirement outcome, and that's the shit that I want my union to do, rather than have to focus on the goddamn Empire Plan, which is okay for me in CSEA, but like the dental say for my brother at PEF, which is Professional Employees Federation, the dental plan is just like a $500 stipend for the whole year, for a whole family, which covers what? 3 cleanings? Not enough. At least for me, it's a percentage. So my $300 bill turns into a $150 bill. It literally cuts my dental bills in half. So and my TikTok handle is Albany Eco Socialist.
Oh, is this not the right one? Oh yeah, no, Albany Eco Socialist. Yeah, gotcha.
I mean, it might be both my name and Albany Eco
Albany
Socialist.
Eco Socialist. Yeah, I just copied how it came up.
I'm glad that you can kind of change both of them, or at least my name shows up. I may have made my name the default, and then
Sure.
the title can change, which is much better than at Mastodon. I'm stuck as 3 lefts, I think.
Yeah.
Unless I make a new account, which could be what I do, since I'm not really doing much with it.
Yeah, me either.
I guess I was really thinking I was going to do 3 lefts for the long haul, but I guess since I was already like 3 years in, I figured like I would go go a full 10 years, not the 5, which was sort of my like cutoff if I was going to have a cutoff.
Sure.
So yeah, that's some of the talking points for New York Health, but otherwise I think it's self-explanatory if you know anything about single-payer healthcare, and that the assembly passed it twice in 2015, which was like the last time I was lobbying for this. So yeah, they were focusing on like the Mid-Hudson representatives. So they didn't seem to arrange for enough meetings, because once a few meetings got canceled, all the groups had to double up. And this was bad because now you had a 30-person group going to an office. Offices can fit maybe 5 to 10
Pretty
max.
unwieldy. Yeah.
You don't want a group more than 8, I think, going into any office.
Unless you designate a representative, I suppose.
I'm just saying the groups are all like, each person in these groups is a representative of some kind.
Sure.
They're all coming there as like a rep. And it was also the physicians for a national health care plan, Metro group. So they're all, a lot of them from downstate. So, and I think so maybe that was why they were focusing on the Hudson Valley and downstate people. Though the downstate's kind of on a lock. It's the kind of purple areas, quote unquote, that are more suburban in character. So for every suburban voter we pick up, we'll get, for every urban minority voter we lose.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes
How did that
actually
work out?
which is also how the kind of democratic leadership in New York sort of acts sometimes. It's like we have to cater to the suburbs of New York City and Buffalo,
Mhm.
and not the people in the cities, even though they would deliver us healthy margins, majorities every time. But then you're kind of giving up like congressional districts. You don't want to lose those, and that's how you could have a New York congressional delegation that's split. There are times where it's split because like you get a wave
Yeah.
of and that's what we had this last cycle. Like 3 more Republicans won there in Congress or something. So let's get we can get moving.
Sure, yeah.
Let's see other questions.
Get to a video. All right. Let me just share.
Something fun.
Let's see what we got here. Yeah, agriculture.
I also had a little adventure in mass transit, though it wouldn't. Most viewers, it wouldn't mean anything, but there's an art museum in a small town called Beacon in the Hudson Valley area, and I can get there using an Amtrak train and then the Metro North. But I kind of messed up because the Metro North is part of MTA, New York City Transit, and I needed to treat it like it was the subway because it really is, even though it's a full train on train tracks.
Sure.
Outside, it stops. It's for 40 seconds and then it goes. So if you're not on the platform ready to jump on like it's the subway, you miss it.
Wow, it's that fast, huh?
Yeah, really freaking fast. I mean, when people are commuting, every minute counts. So
I suppose
you don't want to stop for too long, especially when you have like 20 stops.
Sure.
Between Grand Central and Poughkeepsie,
Poughkeepsie.
which is where it ends. And I got pizza there at a really nice place. Not really nice. The food was nice. The interior less so. It's more of a takeout pizza place.
They want you in and out.
But I got a Stromboli, which was twice the size I was expecting.
Love a good Stromboli.
For $13, it was.
Whoa!
Whoa! Yeah. Maybe it was like a footer, I guess. But usually a Stromboli is 6 inches. Like a sub.
Right.
But when you get a footer, it's like $5 foot long, right? $13 foot long. But again, it was an eggplant parm. And I was worried when I ordered it, like, oh shit, I think I made a big mistake. I do not need all this bread. I hope the eggplant isn't breaded. Thankfully, it wasn't, because like I've gone. If you go to a shitty pizza place, or they'll have the eggplant breaded and then they'll put it on the pizza or in the calzone.
Oh, that's weird.
Or something. So it's bread
I
and
haven't
bread.
seen that before. Yeah, that's a lot.
Maybe I'm thinking of like fair food where you take bread and you fry it. So it's bread and breading.
Bread.
But this time it was just the cheese and the eggplant, and so it was good, really good actually. And the sauce was, interestingly, there was a sit-down Italian place next door.
Oh, really?
I don't know if they had the same kitchen or something. It didn't look like it, but they also don't seem to be competing because the sit-down place was very much like a Sundowners kind of place. I didn't actually feel comfortable going in, but also because yeah,
sure.
But I also didn't feel like pizza, so it's like I had to be careful what I ordered. But Beacon has an art museum there, so I was there because of get this. My friend who's organizing at Amazon in the Catskill area, the Amazon warehouse.
Sure.
He went to a meeting where he met this woman named Sydney, And Sydney is also she's a real deal though. She's a salter, and her campaign in this health care facility wasn't going so hot. So she got a part-time job, or at least she was to transition. She got a part-time job to supplement, and at Dia Beacon, Dia being like this art foundation that collected all this modern art, and so they have a string of museums like the Guggenheim.
Oh, I see.
And one of their facilities is Rehab Nabisco factory in Beacon, where they can have all of the really big room-sized sculptures and other types of installations that take up a lot of space, like in mid-century modern stuff, like the pile of glass and the strings that take up an entire like football field, and the big curved sheets of steel that are kind of rusted a bit. So they have this nice reddish hue. They're shaped into these spirals that you can kind of walk inside. And then the basement's this big piece where it just has this really specific lighting and droning sound, and it's very experiential. And it's, place is filled with things like that.
That sounds fun.
But also like a kind of non-educated person will be like, what the fuck is this? Because one of the pieces is like called Loverboy, and it's the artist's description, a gay man from the 70s, was like the art is just these light translucent blue curtains, and you just hang them up on windows. That's the piece. Oh yeah, and they have to hang in a way that like they hit the floor, so they're kind of crumpled up on the floor, and you have to hang these curtains. That's the piece, and it's up to you what kind of windows and configuration and whatever. I leave it up to the art
curator,
the curator, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, it's a huge, expansive industrial facility that's hollowed out. So they basically have this football field long side of the building with windows with these light blue curtains. It's just that. Otherwise, the space is completely empty. it's a wacky place.
I can't.
Yeah, it's a wacky place. I mean, there's a super big room. It's like the Warhol room, and it's just one set of Warhol prints. It's the same shape. It's not like a subject. It's more like a shape, but maybe it started as a subject. But again, he's printed it so many times, it's undistinguishable what the shape originally was. But it's different colors. But he repeats a bunch of colors too, so it wasn't really popping to me. But it's literally this football field size space, half of one maybe, soccer field size space, with just Warhol around it,
just the Warhol,
in filling like wallpaper.
Wow.
So it's just this huge facility, and I had maybe a chance, or maybe it was just because it had just opened when I started school. It was like in 2005 that it was in the magazines, and like, I don't know if I want to spend time going up the Metro North to do this. So I had MoMA right there,
Yeah. Why do I take the extra time?
Okay, enough distraction. All
right.
So just pick one. I'm leaving it to you.
Yeah.
I wrote down things that aren't interesting now.
Sure, we can start with one of these shorter ones here. Maybe I don't think we've done that one friend whose politics make no sense.
Sure, that's literally just a Vine.
Gotcha.
I am about to state my political beliefs.
I didn't realize you cared. You just kind of watch Rube Goldberg machine videos on your phone all day.
I want taxes to go up.
What? Oh, like for rich people.
Only for poor people. This will incentivize them to stop being poor.
Where's the research on that?
I want abortion legal everywhere.
So you prefer Kamala.
And compulsory, so that there will be no new babies.
Why?
Because overpopulation is destroying the ozone layer.
You don't like climate change.
Because it's making all the immigrants come to America.
So you prefer Trump?
I'm a communist.
How?
Who believes in the free market.
What?
But only for cryptocurrency, we need to bring back the gold standard.
Why?
In order to bring back conservative family values. Also, I'm gay. I do not have sex with men.
So you're voting for...
Not sure, but I'm excited to vote in a critical district in a swing state this year.
I bet you are.
Thank you for coming to my first...
That's funny.
Probably delete that one. Or removed it.
It lingers.
Oh, I did before. Maybe you.
Maybe I've not refreshed.
Oh no, sorry, no, I didn't remove it yet.
No, it's still there.
But now I will. Or actually, I need to crypt this audio for that. So, not that I'm taking sound clips for the intros to my shows anymore, since I don't have the show. But someday maybe it could be.
You never know. You could start back up.
Want to have that bank of sound effects
For sure. There you go.
of drops, sort of.
But that is funny. You meet people like that all the time. Just you wonder what combination of things they've assembled to arrive at their political conclusions.
Well, because as you grow up in a sort of apolitical or just non-politicized or class or conscious household or life, you sort of gather that everything's sort of good. So it's family values are good, taxes for this are good, incentives are good. Okay, you know what? I think what that hypothetical, caricature sort of represents the Homo economicus, the avid listener of Freakonomics and reader of other neoliberal books, because neoliberal books are this mismatch of capitalist ideology, liberal ideology, but also reactionary and conservative.
Yeah.
Just not on certain social issues, but they'll say they'll be the strong. On the other hand, we don't want to upset those who are more conservative. So, but hell, maybe I'm conservative. You'll have a lot of people like that where it's well, actually, I think I'm conservative. I actually knew a guy who was a registered Green. I was going through my contact bank, so I was reminded that I existed in my past. And I completely forgotten about him because he was such an oddball, and once I stopped interacting with him, he's out of sight, out of mind. But he was the kind of guy where it's he was very odd. Actually, maybe I read. Well, I read some of I could read the texts, but he would confuse the shit out of me because he would contradict himself. You know what? I think I'm actually getting conservative, and that was sort of where I'm okay, I guess he's growing out of being an active Green Party person.
Yeah,
he wasn't really good at being an active Green in the first place because either he didn't have an ideology or he was figuring that out, but he wasn't making any effort to figure it out. And he seemed like he was really depressed, like you would mention, something frightening to me actually, that he had this stupor and he couldn't get out of bed for a week, and that's why I didn't hear from him for a bit or something.
Oh, jeez.
So I sort of kind of had to leave him on the wayside because I wasn't in the position to take care of people, and obviously this guy wasn't asking for it. He was towards the bottom. Was it Will Steele? Okay, I don't want to use the name. Whoops. Yeah, so let's see. He would be really. I want to make sure I don't use names. So he asked me, this is in 2019. Did any of the write-ins win? And I say, unfortunately, no. They did win via real votes, but the bastards are the equivalent of ballot stuffing. I don't even know what I was talking about. He only texted me this, so it feels like I'm being trolled. I know, I can't. He had this pattern where is he being funny? He doesn't sound like he's having fun. I hereby declare my candidacy for the 21st Congressional District in 2020. I make no promises to do anything to achieve election. At this point in my life, I don't even think I will fit in with any kind of green leftist progressive platform. In fact, I'm actually becoming quite conservative in my worldview. But someone should do it, and I would be willing to make an ass out of myself debating our current Congressman Paul Tonko. He was actually one of the guys standing outside the Department of Ed with his dick in his hand. Are you really going to block us from coming in, private contractor? And I said, I responded with, you're as annoying as you are nice, but you should probably wait on that and run for council with me and someone else, assuming in 2020 I was going to do that. But instead I ended up, I tried running for assembly as just a kind of ballot filling candidate. But then I screwed that up. I want people I grew up with and their families to have the option to vote for me. That's Colin A. Well, that sounds more reasonable. But if you aren't trying to, as you say, win or do anything, why you? Well, I suggest you come to the next monthly meeting to talk about this, or running. If we have a hard time finding anyone to step up, and we do want to run someone against him, but we prefer someone to not look like an ass, as you may expect, which is definitely Peter Lavigna's main concern, which is sort of what's actually being debated about right now so Stefanik's old seat, which is, there's got to be a special election. Maybe there won't be actually. But the 21st district in, the Adirondacks and the North Country, we call it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy who wants to run as a Green endorsed candidate. There's some kind of sus things. He doesn't live in the district, and we like someone to be in the district. But no one else has stepped up, but he also kind of doesn't seem to know what he's doing in the district. And he was asking us to help him get a job in the district, so he could, move there. Hopefully I'm not giving away too much of that, but just they're just to summarize, there's, when you're a body that actually endorses people for office, there really are a lot of considerations, especially when you're a grassroots party of you don't want to look like a fool. You want someone who knows people, because you could end up okay. I'll relate it to something that happened in the past, which was a woman named Robin. What was her last name? It was a cool name she had. And she was running for Senate against Schumer. She was our candidate against Schumer one year. But she ended up biting off more than she could chew and ended up not really campaigning at all, which really sucks. Because she seemed like she had good energy, and she gave an okay interview that I heard her give, but it could have been better. And she was a Brooklyn activist. So she had a good look of her and whatever. She was her nickname is Butterfly. But she wasn't ready for prime time because I think she talked about doing a statewide tour, but then didn't do it. So talk, and then find out it's a full-time job, and I said, wait, you mean I can't just do this in a few hours a week? No, running for state, national Senate is
it's kind of a full-time job, huh?
Yeah, it's not something you can fit between your other activities. And so some voices in our state committee are we got to be picky. We'd rather have no candidate than a candidate that just doesn't do anything. In a way, because, well, there's a debate to be made about better have some name than nobody. But we'd rather have somebody who's not going to make us look silly. We need to be serious. So if the serious thing is to run nobody, if they can't run well. What do you think?
True. Yeah, I would say so. You don't want to make yourselves look like amateur hour for sure. So I don't think it's necessarily a good idea just to stuff seats or
It's sort of why
paper candidate
since 2017 and my sort of pseudo effort in 2020, I haven't run for anything. I basically decided until I can be serious about it. That means having a full-time job and an income and being financially secure, I guess. Feeling like I have enough of a, not just community, but people I can depend on, people I can ask for help, and I know they'll actually respond and not ghost. I feel like I built that up, and I think it'll the proof will be in the pudding in the next few months when I petition. Not that I have an absolutely massive undertaking to get 75 signatures, but knowing how much help I really get, the fundraiser I do in May Day, And I finished making, like, I went through all the contacts on my phone and I sorted them based on, friend, family, old co-worker, old school person. So I'm going to call them all and ask for a donation once that's set up, which is pretty soon. Bank account's ready. So
Nice.
And I can also ask you for a donation. It'll be on Venmo. People for Platt.
People for Platt on Venmo. Okay. Do you have that set up already, or
Soon? I'll let you
soon?
know.
Okay, yeah.
I'll
definitely be
because
plugging that.
when it comes to grassroots fundraising, it's not all going to come in the ward. That never really is the case. When candidates are funded by their friends and family when
Sure.
it's a grassroots campaign, it's not the people in the neighborhood, unless they've done years of relational organizing so that they're already friends with everyone who's somebody.
Yeah. So
in
if
the
those
ward,
friends are also the
which is sort of what I've been trying to do in the city, I guess, citywide. Not so much just in my ward, but because I wasn't sure where I was moving or if I was moving. Now I know I'm not. So I could wait another 2 years, I guess, and run once I know like I've made enough relationships with people in the ward. But it's also just a matter of the relational organizing is more for your core of volunteers, which will be all cis men, actually, unfortunately. But because that's just who gels with me, I guess, or I gel with them, or it's demographics. But hey, it's not can't be all just the women and the minorities, and can do things too, we always have, right?
Don't run on that platform.
No, I'm not. But the question will be asked: what is this nerdy white kid running in a minority majority ward? And the answer is, I've lived here 36 years.
Mhm.
I can represent it better than anybody. And we've had minority representation my whole life, and it hasn't gotten rid of the blight. And if you think that we're still in 1970 and someone who looks like me can't possibly empathize with the poor and people with black and don't understand and aren't class or race conscious, allow me to quote Malcolm X better than you.
Ooh, yeah.
Well, I've been collecting all his quotes where he like slams the Dems. It's basically half of the Ballad of the Bullet is just him haranguing on the Dems. It's actually kind of good for that. And it's always left out of all the Malcolm X tributes.
Yeah, funny that.
Yeah.
Just like MLK's talk about the white moderate being the greatest enemy of progress.
Yeah, though I'm not sure if those were kind of one-off quotes and not whole speeches. In this case, it's most of the first speech. Interestingly, rereading parts of Ballad of Bullet, or the whole thing actually, reminded me it was when I was reading it in high school when it was assigned. This was the first time I encountered someone who was left-wing or from the the side that's perceived as Democrat.
Sure.
Actually not Democrat and critical of the Democrats.
Yeah.
Until that year in high school, I had never been introduced or exposed to left-wing voices like that. It wasn't until college. It was then, actually. Unfortunately, there wasn't too much more exposure between Malcolm X and then reading Engels in third year of college, but or actually meeting actual Trotskyists and stuff at the first or second year. Okay, so I'll pick that next video.
Sure, yeah. All right, let's pick another quick one. EBPREC Overview 2018 East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative. That sounds interesting. Let's take a look.
I don't think I've actually watched it.
Greetings. My name is Noni Session, and this is my colleague and fellow cooperator, Gregory Jackson. We are two of the co-leads for East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative, aka EBPREC. The two of us are Oakland natives from the flats of West and East Oakland, respectively, two of the most municipally neglected, yet economically and environmentally impacted communities in the region. Like many urban communities across the nation, our home, our history, and our entire way of life is under threat of disappearance due to rampant land speculation and racialized housing injustice. We at EB Prec are transforming this system of housing and finance by innovating community-driven and Black, Indigenous, POC-led neighborhood development strategies in Oakland and the East Bay. We facilitate investor relationships and democratic organization building for everyday people to organize, finance, acquire, and co-steward land and housing on our own terms. We create permanently affordable housing and use real estate as a foundation for exercising community self-determination and building collective wealth among historically disenfranchised Black, Indigenous, and POC communities.
We are designing an innovative financial, business, and cooperative toolbox that provides accessible, community-driven development where local residents are empowered to determine the character of their own neighborhoods. We decommodify land, build community wealth, leverage community cohesion for political power, and disrupt the root causes of racialized inequity in housing and housing justice. As a movement cooperative, we build on the radical legacy of Bay Area movement cultures, community land trusts, and housing cooperatives. Our projects are financed by small-scale, non-extractive community investments, operated by a Democratic Staff Collective, and organized by small groups of tenants and neighbors who will identify multi-use buildings in their neighborhood to remove from the speculative market and shepherd into our cooperative.
We are a 5-person staff collective at EB Prec, and each of our leaders comes to this project deeply affected by these drastic changes taking place in our hometown. Greg, for instance, is a native East Oakland resident who has seen firsthand the toll disinvestment takes on a community. Or myself, a third-generation West Oaklander who still lives in my family home, but is watching as my longtime neighbors are displaced one by one, and as 6,000 of my neighbors nightly go to sleep on the pavement.
We believe that the permanent real estate model represents an important paradigm shift in the way communities of color view and approach displacement. We envision cooperative corridors everywhere, and our tools are designed for responsiveness, giving communities the latitude to take place-based approaches underneath the umbrella of a regional cooperative. EB Prec creates open source business, legal, organizational, and financial tools for future replicability. We intentionally educate and Skillshare with our community about cooperatives and property acquisition strategies to foster sovereign relationships between us and the land. We have also learned that truly participatory and democratic organizations cannot exist without trusting relationships rooted in trauma-informed healing, which led us to embed healing in our educational and team-building activities.
Also embedded in our vision is a reimagination of how credit tools work for Black, Indigenous, and POC communities. As you know, credit worthiness is a highly class, racialized, and individualized function of the finance industry. EB Prec shifts this vision of finance to one where community cohesion is the key determinant of credit worthiness. In this, our financial model pivots on a community investment strategy where everyone is affected by unchecked capitalism and everyone can be part of the solution, from the large accredited investor to the small everyday community stakeholder to the gentrifier, which we prefer to call the economic migrant. Our value added is that our model creates permanent affordability for our residents through acquiring multi-use properties that can accommodate an additional revenue stream, for instance, solar panels, in order to cap rents for permanent affordability. Our property selection rubric as well intends to root Black, Indigenous, and POC communities into their neighborhoods so that they may, in a long-term fashion, steer community development from a sovereign and stable position.
The East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative is in the final stages of our initial research and development phase. We have a great team of attorneys, a great collection of staff, and a $100,000 loan for acquisition and technical assistance from the Force for Good Fund. We have also identified many properties for permanent removal off the speculative market. However, we need more runway capital to successfully increase staffing, increase our acquisition fund, as well as educate our members.
We may need to check if this is an earlier video of theirs, 2018. So that's not too long ago. But 6 years can be a lot. I know they have more recent videos with their acquisitions,
Sure.
which are pretty impressive. and they're a little less stilted.
Yeah,
in
you
their
can tell they're
delivery.
reading a script. You know,
Well, besides that, like I
Yeah.
literally put the last 5 years into being able to talk without needing a script, and even if I have a script, I can read it without. Well, I mean, I think this is a skill I developed, 15 years ago, I think, but not 5. But
Sure.
that's sort of why I started podcasting, because I had already developed the whole like I talk pretty good, and I can, even if I'm reading something, I can put some impact and motion into it.
Some dynamism into it. Yeah.
Dynamism, yeah. But the beginning and end of me saving this, basically, it will also to show off the concept, though there's probably a bit of videos that they have that maybe
Yeah,
they
some
didn't
interesting
have any.
things they said.
Yeah, so their investment shares are $1,000. So
Okay.
and I think they raised another like 100 or 80 grand from that. I think, yeah. So they had 80 people who could invest $1,000, and this is sort of like just like a land trust or community loan fund. The return on investment is essentially got to be like 2%, or something like that. It's like it can
Something
never be
small,
more.
yeah.
It can never be more than 5. It's usually 2 to 3 at most. So even if you put in 1,000, you maybe get $70-$100 back, after 5 years. But that's because like they're not extracting, rents and stuff.
Yeah, that's not the point.
So,
I
yeah.
think
So
it's
Esther's Orbit Room is like their major project. So that's like a multi-use space that they're kind of turning into a community center. But it's also can be like, part restaurant, part cafe, part meeting, part office.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
there's like a big, or not a garage, but like there's a building next door that is pretty much like already furnished, not furnished, but like finished. The Orbit Room needs renovation, but or at least, yeah, it's not a total like trash hole though. So it just looks like one on the outside, but it seemed to be usable. But obviously it's, needs another 100 grand of work at least. And they've apparently helped other tenant unions buy out their building. So it's not
That's
just
really
through
cool.
purchases, but of their own, but they're helping others organize their way into getting the building, their apartment building, off the market too.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I want to kind of learn more about that. Essentially, if the party building doesn't work out in the next 2-3 years, I'll switch to this.
Yeah, this
Or
seems like a cool model.
I party build for 5 years, and then I do this for the next, 5-10 years after that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, well, unfortunately, like my mortgage that I start this year, assuming I get there, will be like a 30-year. But
Sure.
I hope to not be paying it for that long.
Yeah.
I think if my income goes up, I'll definitely make those payments bigger, and I want to knock it down to 15 years or something.
There you go.
Eventually. I mean, I'm interviewing every other week for a position that would like add another 10 grand to my income. So
Nice.
when I put that savings away and I make those payments bigger, it's only taken me, I've added 50 grand in my savings in just 3 years. That's why I feel like, do I really need 30 years to pay back 100 grand? I feel like I only need, 10 years, but,
Hey, 10. There you go.
because that's just putting away $1,000 a month. And if my
Mhm.
mortgage payment is $1,000 a month, but see, it's not just for the cost of the loan. It's also the taxes, the insurance.
For sure.
Yeah, the principal's really like 700 and 800. But yeah, that's the thing about homeownership, which sort of scares a lot of people off. It's not just the price of the house.
No, yeah.
It also means the utilities. It also
Utilities,
means
the maintenance,
the yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I guess a couple of things I was a little confused about in that video. They kept talking about building wealth, and yet they're taking properties, they're decommodifying properties. So that I don't know where that wealth building
right
part comes in.
Huh?
I don't know where the wealth building part comes in. It's like Not making a huge return on your investment. It's not.
Well, they could be using wealth not in terms of capital, but
that's kind of what
simply
I was wondering if
assets.
they meant more like
they obviously have more videos.
richer as a community.
I probably could be watching all of these, but again, it's not the project I'm focused on right now.
Sure. Yeah.
It's what I hope to do in my lifetime. Since we definitely need stuff like this in Albany.
I think because
land trusts, and everywhere too. This is in Oakland. They had someone donate a house in Berkeley, I guess. So they also have like a property in Berkeley, and maybe they'll collect some rent from that or something. I know that there was a group in Troy that was called Margination. They were like kind of anarchist, but like they had experience in the nonprofit sector, and they were kind of getting money from tech billionaires. To fund their decommodifying efforts in Troy, where they they were setting up platform
and this is my colleague and fellow cooperator Gregory Jackson. We are two of the co-leads for East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative.
I'm trying to see. I don't know where it's playing from.
The two of us are Oakland natives.
I don't know what's happening.
This has been happening with a certain channel, but only that channel.
Huh. Weird.
All right. So which one do you want to move on next?
I
know you're picking the shorter ones, but I think if I don't,
we can dig into something a little longer this time. Public bathroom.
So the Yippee becomes Yuppie. That's about the Chicago 7.
Yeah, we can check that one out. Let's do that.
All right. Did you see the movie that Sorkin wrote?
Oh, which one? Which one are we talking about? I don't know.
It was the Chicago 7, or it was
I have not seen the Chicago 7 now. I think
okay.
Yeah.
There's also another kind of like dramatized version of the court of the events put on by lefties. So it's sort of like a reenactment. That's probably a lot better because it's actually based on what really happened. I mean they use the actual transcripts. Sorkin does not. Sorkin's
got to live up everything he does.
He lives up everything, and so like there were parts I'm like really uncomfortable about, and parts where things that I think because it was explained to me beforehand, like I know like this is bullshit, and the whole like, well, the really bullshit thing was that like the undercover cops that were like fucking over our heroes are like, wow, they were really impressed by them reading all of those killed in the war, but Sorkin just has them reading the American casualties, but they read all the casualties, including the North Vietnamese. So yeah, a lot of the radicalism's blunted, makes Abby Hoffman into like a not serious but sort of serious character. Like there's a fade out when he asks this question. It's very obvious. There's some good videos critiquing the movie fully, so I don't have to go into it.
Sure.
So let's Literate Machine. So this is a good YouTube channel, actually. I recommend. They make these kinds of videos. The last video essay-ish, but not an hour long. They actually keep them to under half an hour. So that's a plus. Yeah. I'm really fucking tired of these video essays going like hour-long videos. Sorry, FD. Sorry, FD. Break your videos up. I like when you broke up like your trilogy on like, the types of blacks that they're sellouts.
Sure.
That was nice. So you didn't have to make it 3 hours long. You can make 3-hour things. So it's like 3-part podcast.
Yeah.
But he was doing like this Hotep video, and again, it's like there's 3 essays in here. Just break it up, but use real titles. Like tell what the title of the fucking, because one of them is just called like "This Word Destroyed Black Radicalism." Is he talking about Hotep? I don't know. I don't care. I don't want to find out in the video. I want to know what the video is.
I want some clickbait.
I'm an adult who wants to know what he's watching, because I don't want to waste my goddamn time. Because I will get like 10-20 minutes and they're still just defining terms like I'm a goddamn high school. Like, is that your audience, high school students or something?
It might be. Who knows?
Maybe because they're educators, they're sort of like, this has to be for all audiences.
Stuck in that mode, they have to go through.
But if it is, then you're making them way too long. Is the general casual audience watching or listening? And again, if it is for listening, then don't make your videos so visually, like have visuals in them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
show me from the outset that it's just a still picture, and so it's something to listen to.
For sure.
But like, because then I'm always tempted to click back to see if like he's doing or showing something interesting,
Right.
which
Some
then just like
context you're missing.
ruins the pattern.
Yeah. I mostly listen to YouTube rather than watch. Interesting how that's happened.
I'm Eric Rosenfield. How the Hippies Became Yuppies, the Trial of the Chicago 7. There's a moment in the film, The Trial of the Chicago 7, 2020, where we most clearly see the way that writer-director Aaron Sorkin manipulates historical events to fit his particular worldview and how he wants us to feel about the matter at hand. The movie tells the true story of the at first 8 and then 7 activists who were arrested for involvement in the anti-war protests turned riots at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. In the film, as in real life, Abby Hoffman, co-founder of the flamboyant Yippie activist group, testified on the stand. In the film, Hoffman, Sacha Baron Cohen, has this exchange with the prosecutor, Richard Schultz, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Do you have contempt for your government?
Do I?
Yeah, do you have contempt for your government?
I think the institutions of our democracy are wonderful things that right now are populated by some terrible people.
Abby Hoffman never actually said this. Instead, here's a sample of what Abby Hoffman actually said during his testimony at the trial. Hoffman, fellow defendant Jerry Rubin, told me that he had come to New York to be project director of a peace march in Washington that was going to march to the Pentagon in October 21. He said that the peace movement suffered from a certain kind of attitude, mainly that it was based solely on the issue of the Vietnam War. He said that the war in Vietnam was not just an accident, but a direct byproduct of the kind of system, a capitalist system in the country, and that we had to begin to put forth new kinds of values, especially to young people in the country, to make a kind of society in which a Vietnam War would not be possible.
Wage a culture war, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
In the film, beyond the anti-war activism and the black rights activism of Bobby Seale, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and the Black Panthers, you only get the vaguest sense of the larger goals at play here. Hoffman does refer vaguely to the revolution, and there's a scene between Hoffman and Tom Hayden, Eddie Redmayne, where Hayden refers to, quote, equality, justice, education, poverty, and progress. But those are all concepts so shorn of specifics they could mean almost anything. You get no sense that Hayden was a guy whose most famous piece of writing, the Port Huron Statement, advocated for replacing the American system of government with direct democracy, where all laws would be subject to votes from the entirety of the citizenry.
I think I read this when I was radicalizing, or it was shared with me during or after Occupy, so I was already radicalized. So like, I sort of dropped it reading all of it since it was like old hat.
Sure.
And knowing that like the people in SDS kind of melded, they were part of the transition to yuppiedom and we're going to be good Democrats, as Hayden became, the left wing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to keep my commentary.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Gotcha. But yeah, you can definitely hear Aaron Sorkin speaking through Abby Hoffman there. That's Sorkin's entire worldview is
institutions are fine. It's just that the wrong people are
wrong people,
which is Bush era liberalism at its finest, at its strongest. Like that was the sentiment, that we just have the wrong people. I mean, it's still alive now. Trump is just the wrong person. Biden was the right one and moderate Dems like him are the right people.
All right, people. Yeah.
They're managing things properly, and that's what's like. And it's like it's so easy to think that nothing bad is happening when a Democrat is president. because you're just not told. But if you have to go to left-wing media that will point out that actually, no, the deportations are still ongoing. They're just not, and it's still just as ugly, but the pictures aren't being shared.
Right.
It's so Twilight Zone or Black Mirror, I guess.
Yeah.
It's still there, but the sections of the country that really oppose it aren't seeing it, or they don't want to see it.
Right.
Like they see it, but then it's like, yeah, but they're trying their best. You know, the Dems are trying their best, or there's reasons, or the Republicans are still at fault. Like they're still in charge, even when Democrats are in charge, which is how they always paint it. So now, again, I made a little TikTok about like Dems selling you out, feeling betrayed, feeling like they're not fighting hard. Welcome to my entire life.
Yeah, right.
Every cycle, it's been the exact same. Even when it's Obama as president, they were still not fighting hard. Every cycle, every year, every like opportunity for progress, they would blunt it. They would say, well, we have to cave in the Republicans to save the government, to stop a shutdown, which happened 3 times during Obama at least, right? And it happened every year, or it happened every other year, regardless of who's president.
Yeah.
Which of course makes the rest of the world nervous. Like, what's going on with American government? They keep like not passing budgets, or it's always like up in the air. At least in Europe, they fight over who the government is, but there's never a fight over whether the government's funded or not.
Right.
Because that's separated. The legislation is separate from the bean counting. Just as they have a prime minister, that's their responsibility. The president is, it shouldn't be the same person. That's for goddamn sure. That's why we actually have this super strong executive, and that trickles down to all of our cities and our governors. Strong executives.
Yeah.
We don't seem to realize. Well, that's where the Republicans are like, well, we're a republic, not a democracy. We maintain strong executives, and that's the way we like it. And yet they're always harping about tyranny, but tyranny is possible because of all these strong executives. It just has to be their tyrant, and then they love it. It's keeping the bad people in line, the riffraff.
Oh, and the Dems are the same way, as long as they're tyrants and in power.
Super frustrating, but at the same, like I'm past being angry or disappointed, because I felt all those things back in 2004 when or 06 when they upped the Patriot Act again. Like that was it to me. It's like, oh, all the things that were supposedly bad that Bush and the Republicans did,
could have just done away with
for it.
Here's
and you're not you're actually extending them under Obama. Oh, it's all a lie then.
Of course. And
I figured that out at age 18. And so like I know it's because of my background, my education, my somewhat conscious father, even though he didn't expose me to any of that thinking. He was very much a whole like, well, you have to register Democrat so you can have a say in the primaries because that's what matters. But maybe that's because that was the only ideology he was pushing. Only that, like, my brother registered green when he turned 18, and my father had him switch.
Had him switch. Wow.
Yeah. And so I didn't do that. I registered Dem under the same logic, but I instantly regretted it the cycle later. And so by the time it's only when I'm not under his roof officially, then I switch to green. That's the lesson I learned. I switched to green when I knew that I could probably it didn't matter at that point.
That's funny. Okay, well, let's continue on.
No sense that when Abbie Hoffman talked about revolution, he literally meant overthrowing the American government.
Absolutely. He was all for a communist revolution.
You get no sense of how these defendants were fundamentally...
And Sorkin didn't want him to say that.
Did not want him to say that.
Which they blamed for American involvement in the war in the first place. Jerry Rubin, the other Yippie on trial, remarked later that, quote, during the 5.5-month trial, I agreed more with the government's analysis of our behavior than with our defense. The government said, These men are radicals who wanted a disturbance in Chicago to disrupt American society and protest the war.
Yeah.
No, the words the film puts in Hoffman's mouth are pure Sorkin. Further, in the film, the Johnson administration is positively contrasted with that of Nixon, with Johnson's Attorney General Ramsey Clark, Michael Keaton, getting a hero moment where he testifies that the police started the riot in Chicago, which he'd never said. And it feels like even though Sorkin, to his credit, opens the story with a clip of Johnson...
That's what really makes me mad about Sorkin, and why I like this video. It's pointing out that, in changing history, he's just lying. He has to lie to make Johnson and Democrats the good guys.
Right.
It's like the West Wing. He has to. I mean, it's pure fiction that this president is good. Geez. You have to, and it means that since and the angry thing is that the Democrats are even the mainstream ones, the ones in power, they take it seriously. They believe the lie. So it isn't like that they're conniving, oh, I love lying to the American people. They are deluded. They believe their own lies. That's what I'm left to conclude, because they really do. That explains their behavior more than anything. That when they capitulate to the Republicans, they do believe they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But that's, of course, what's truly scary, when someone believes they're doing the right thing when they're doing something terrible. Because it means that when someone calls them out, they're like, you're the bad ones.
I'm the good guy here, yeah.
You lefties are the problem. I'm doing the right thing.
Still trying to pin.
Because I believe that they believe the lies presented by Sorkin, because I guess even Sorkin, I don't know if Sorkin knows he's lying. He says, I'm just a storyteller telling a good story. A story between good and bad. And black and white.
Clear good person has
Democrats and Republicans.
Evil.
Yeah. And the Chicago 7 are just, temporarily aggrieved Democrats.
Yeah, yeah. I
just like occupiers, just like BLM activists.
I think I would believe that, at least with Sorkin, he does believe his own bullshit. Yeah, that's just.
But then why does he have to change the lines then? Change the transcripts. He must know he's changing the transcripts.
I mean,
unless at his high level, he's not.
He said, well, this is what they meant to say. This is in their heart. This is what they would have come to this conclusion had they really sat down and thought about it. I'm sure there's some sort of ad hoc rationalization or post hoc rationalization.
I guess. I mean, has he been asked in these interviews? Probably not.
I don't know. I don't know if I could get through a Sorkin interview.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Well, I guess you get the sort of dynamic if you ask a mainstream Dem about radical Martin Luther King.
Yes, right.
And what do they say to that? What's their usual tact response?
I mean, they always bring up the "I have a dream" speech. That's just their go-to, and everyone.
I think what they do is they just kind of they pivot back to the mythical King, and they just well, actually, King was actually all about moderating people's the best of them.
He's bringing out the best of
yeah. They'll just turn it right back to what they'll just turn it right back, and they'll ignore whatever was brought up, which frustrated me to end watching the Sunday news, politicians growing up in the college, where I'm trying to figure things out and what kind of bullshit am I able to tolerate or tease out, or who isn't full of bullshit. And it turns out it was everyone on TV. So it's just I have to go to things not on TV.
Complete outside sources, yes.
Not institutional news.
Not part of the machine.
Yeah, it was that just meant podcasts, unfortunately.
Yeah,
the Daily
could
Show.
Be worse.
Daily Show counts.
Daily Show, but even
less bullshit there. And then I was like, well, there is some bullshit here, actually. So
there's yeah. All right, moving on.
War effort. He still can't help himself but show the Democrats in a positive light, because Sorkin believes that the American system works well when in the hands of the right people, and the right people are liberal Democrats, as illustrated by every frame of every episode of his liberal fantasia, The West Wing. Despite the fact that American involvement in the war being protested was begun and escalated under 2 liberal Democratic administrations, and the Chicago Seven were arrested protesting the Democratic National Convention and beaten by police operating under the authority of a liberal Democratic mayor. Over and over again, the film invokes the theme that American values are good, and the people who the right accuses of being anti-American or un-American are actually the most patriotic ones of all. This is why in the big climax, Hayden reads into the record the names of American soldiers who died in the war, causing everyone in the courtroom to stand, including the prosecutor.
And they all clapped.
And everybody clapped.
Including the undercover cops who busted them.
That's right. You know, just
that's what
hearts and
really
minds.
made me mad at the end. Like, I was like, this is kind of hokey, but like, I like that the story is being told.
Yeah,
in this way.
At least it's getting some exposure.
But it was at that end where it's
down.
like, oh right, this is all kind of bullshit. Or it's like I was sort of waiting. Well, I mean, it was a lot of it in there, in fact. Yeah, a lot of cringe moments. But that was the most cringe. That's where I'm just like, oh my fucking God. I don't know if I would laugh my ass off when the undercover cop is like stands up and starts clapping. Or I just like roll my eyes into the next room.
All right.
I forget my reaction, but it was a large emotional reaction.
Oh man.
All right, let's get rolling.
Indeed.
Meanwhile, in real life, it was pacifist David Dellinger who read the names of the dead into the record, and he included both American and North and South Vietnamese war dead. Because it wasn't about proving who was the most patriotic, it was about criticizing the horrors of war itself.
Mm-hmm.
All mentions of the evils of capitalism or any inherent problems at the heart of America are completely stripped away in this presentation. It's very much a piece with Joe Biden saying that the January 6, 2021 riots at the U.S. Capitol, quote, do not reflect a true America, when in fact, nothing reveals the true face of America better.
Then what was the Boston Tea Party? What was the Boston Tea Party then?
Mm-hmm.
Fuck off.
Thinking they can take whatever they want without consequences. Indeed, the famously awful Judge Hoffman, Frank Langella, no relation to Abby, is portrayed as overtly Trump-like. And when he bars Ramsey Clark's testimony from the jury, which did happen because the judge felt he hadn't provided anything relevant, Clark whispers to the defense attorney to
just get to work on the appeal,
which he also never actually said in reality. In other words, the representative of Democratic Party politics is saying, we're going to lose here, but we'll win later, as if promising the future Biden administration to the audience. Don't worry, good guys will win out in the end. And while it's true that the members of the Chicago Seven who were convicted were later freed on appeal, it's also true that none of the police officers who assaulted them were ever brought up on charges or saw the least consequences, and that American involvement in the war would continue for another 5 years and not before expanding illegally into Cambodia. In the film, Yippee Jerry Rubin chiefly serves as a comedic foil and sidekick to Hoffman, with his main plot lines, both invented for the film, involving him falling in love with an undercover operative and being hilariously still hung up on her and feeling betrayed.
Did she ever mention me?
He calls after the prosecutor Schultz when they run into each other in the park. And he gets one significant scene where he saves a protesting woman holding an American flag from being raped during a riot. A bit on the nose as a metaphor there, Aaron. The real Rubin is a fascinating figure and is going to serve as the central spoke of the argument I want to make in the rest of this piece to explain the relationship of Sorkin and his film to the larger hippie and activist culture of the 1960s. As indicated by Hoffman's testimony and his own quote about the trial above, Rubin was a radical firebrand, a self-described communist who wrote a book in which he encouraged young people to burn down their universities, join communes, and arm themselves. Anti-war pacifists, he wrote, are only as strong as the crazy revolutionaries behind them ready to burn the whole motherfucker down. Now, after learning all that, you might be surprised to find out that by the 1980s, Rubin had cut his hair, donned a tie, and gotten a job as a securities trader on Wall Street.
Oh.
How did such a thing happen? Jerry Rubin, fresh out of college and working as a journalist, had a formative experience when he visited Cuba and met Che Guevara. Guevara told him and his young friends that they were doing the most important fight of all, fighting in the belly of the beast. When he returned to the United States, he was arrested for the first time for his trip, and his future path was set. Rubin enrolled in grad school at Berkeley, but soon dropped out to join the throngs of non-students who'd taken to living around the school and hanging out on campus. These burgeoning hippies were mostly middle-class white baby boomers, born into the long prosperity in the wake of...
I think that's kind of important to the subculture here, is that like we think of the radicalizing class to recruit from, to build the left as students.
Mm-hmm.
But this radical left actually weren't students. They were dropouts, where they started college, but then they stopped. So they had a lot of time to do all these rather radical projects. You sort of have to check out of the game to do these projects. Now, of course, how are you making ends meet? I guess they were doing a lot of mutual aid, dumpster diving, and all the things that made them, trashy and whatever.
Sure.
And I'm too good for any of that, I guess, or I don't want to. Or I'll do it on occasion, I suppose. Me and my friends, we love our version of dumpster diving is, well, like I said, the neighborhood adjacent, right? It's both it's poor, or it's got all these drug users. But also ritzy people who put out pretty nice furniture like on trash night. So you can grab and furnish your apartment pretty well with the stuff that's just put out.
Yeah.
Constantly. I just got like this other ottoman. Or a stool rather, but a footstool. And because I actually needed one for my parlor. And I've been picking stuff up that my tenant puts out. Hopefully it's a prelude to her moving out, but I don't know. I thought it was a prelude when I saw some other piece of furniture, but it wasn't. So.
Well. But yeah. Getting stuff off the street.
Yeah. Buy Nothing's a great group. It allows me to declutter my house. And feel pretty good about it. I'm not earning any money, but like if I put on Marketplace and waited for a buyer, there's a lot of uncertainties there. I know that when I put on Buy Nothing, someone will either say I'm interested and they will come by for it. And it's so easy and fast and dependable, more dependable than using the market.
For sure.
The market is very undependable. That's why when it comes to being retail, it's just about storing things until someone buys it. You can have all the inventory. It doesn't mean that you're going to I sell this many. I have 60,000. I have 6,000 of this. If I sell each one for $5, I'll have $1 million, or $100,000.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
No.
At all. It sucks that way though. Because it means like you're thinking like, I want to think like a planner, but the market is the opposite of that. And that dichotomy just like, I want to plan. And that's why like having the guaranteed salary of my state job helps me think like a planner. I have this much money coming in. I can do this things. I can, I can think like a planner instead of a marketeer where it's just like, well, I have this much inventory. I'll sell this much of it like over 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to think differently. And it also means you have to make hard choices as the small business owner puts it.
Sure. A lot of inefficiency and waste in that. Yeah.
So, yeah. The economics of the hippie movement are sort of like, just like most punks, it's just like, well, how are they making ends meet?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess selling drugs, but then you sell drugs to people, where are they getting the cash? And so I guess it comes down to like, they are all doing a bit of crime somehow.
Yeah, they're probably selling to college students and.
Oh yeah, right, yeah. So so like they were parasites onto the Berkeley.
I mean, they're providing a useful product. I wouldn't say that's a parasite.
I get that, right.
Flourishing of wealth following the wholesale destruction of the European economies. Kids whose parents had enthusiastically embraced the suburban post-war dream following the privations of the Great Depression and the war and embraced a conformity their children now found stifling. It's almost impossible for those of us who weren't there to imagine what an eruption on the social fabric the hippies really were in the 1960s, and how they could really believe that their movement would reshape society. Rubin referred to the people living on the streets and in the low-cost housing around Berkeley as, quote, living communism, sharing things in kind and making whatever money they did need through selling drugs or hawking copies of the local indie paper. Rubin and his fellows imagined a future new nation where hippie communes in the country could trade food directly with hippie communes in the cities, who would provide services like free schools, healthcare, and cultural products, completely bypassing the capitalist economy. The real conflict...
You're kind of missing all of that other manufacturing for things, though. I think that's something that the kind of the radicals of the 60s and 70s kind of left out, all of the intermediate industry and heavy industry. Like, you need these things. Otherwise, what are you using to build your houses? You know, just planks of wood, I guess. But then you need a miller. There's all of these intermediate industries
to bring your products to the market. How you know?
Yeah, where the cars are the VWs they're driving around are made in Germany. You know, it's just like they're not making them. They're not self-sufficient. No. Even when they were like really going for self-sufficiency, like if they were really serious about it, the Back to the Landers really like they were primitivists. And so it's just like because they weren't doing any do-it-yourself industry, which is where Cooperative Jackson is trying to fill in those gaps and actually try to do it right by, we're doing community gardens and we're doing like renovation services, but we're also trying to make a fab lab so we can actually make things like furniture and household goods and intermediary stuff, which we need to be thinking about. As municipalists, you know, to have industry or jobs in my city as I run for council, like we need jobs that stick around, that aren't replaceable, or offshoreable, because they're things that we actually need, and we're not going to just. It can't be something that closes because the tides of the market changed. That even as a kid, I was sad about it. I was like, why does it have to be this way? This restaurant's great. Why is it closing? Oh, the business is hard. Something bad happened. I'm like,
well, or today it's a vulture capitalist group decided to just milk it for money and didn't really care about his profit.
But to me, that's also the tides of the market. Now it's the tides of capitalism, so it's a few layers above. But it's just sort of like it's pure ideology to think like that's fair. Because there's no other way of doing it.
Right.
But I know there's better ways. Or at least like why not? Or it's just I'm my inner child. Why not? Why isn't it? I was asking as a team, not so much as a team, but in college, I was asking, why is it this? And whether you're reading, libertarian stuff or liberal stuff or the Freakonomics guys, they're not answering that question. Why does it have to be this way?
No.
They have no good answer. And when they did give in such an answer, it was just like the arguments for God that were cycled through around the new atheist movement. That's why the new atheist movement, I feel like, primed me to be a socialist, because it gave me the toolkit to see like any argument for capitalism is the same as arguing for a literal Bible.
Yeah.
Or even God to some extent, but but it's funny. Actual Jay kind of actually made this point when reacting to the Sam Cedar against 30 conservative propagandist video.
Fun video.
That the theists or the theocrats will actually proudly state that their theology is objective or such. But then when they're asked what their theology is, it's also an opinion. It's both the truth, the one truth, but it's also an opinion.
Right.
They'll actually say this about their beliefs. Well, Christianity, it's just our opinion. It's my personal belief that you can't question. Right. Or it's mine. So it's not your business to argue with me about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It was that there was that one main guy who was very aggressive against Sam there, who was just like, if you don't have a religion, you don't have a
Morality.
basis of morality. But I have a basis of morality. Oh, what's that basis? Well,
It's my opinion.
My opinion, basically.
It was
It's
totally like
it's my
it was
preference,
which
which he was trying to argue
preference.
against. Yeah.
Which he was trying to make the liberal look silly by making everything like that they believe in to be a preference.
They just want preference.
But then he did it himself.
It feels good. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, of course.
Babies. What baby stuff? All of those guys were babies. And it's hilarious. It's maybe a little scary, a little concerning.
Tragic,
is that it's like people reacting to this would just call them conservatives, but they're not just conservatives. They're wannabe influencers. They're propagandists themselves.
Tradcaths
that's why they're so confident. It's like it's their job to be propagandists and confident.
Yeah. You got to sell it. You got to sell.
I don't know if they really believe it, but they're definitely selling that they believe it.
Mm-hmm.
The one nothing annoyed me like the guy with didn't actually have a bun, but he had like a hipster haircut.
Yeah.
Whereas he just talked like this, really empathetically, like he really cared. And he was like that. And it was just so fucking fake. Oh my God.
It was. You're talking about the one who believe that government agencies are
getting tax cuts.
They get tax breaks for DEI.
And this is actually hurting minorities because then they're getting he didn't use the language because I guess it's too advanced, but it's like they're getting imposter syndrome. And that's the true crime of DEI.
Right.
The true harm.
That was his whole stick.
The true harm is that it's creating imposter syndrome in minorities.
But yeah, you're right. Just so like this is how it is, and I care so much about these people who are being hurt by this policy.
And you don't.
No, yeah.
I care, and you're just denying all of this great evidence.
I would love to know where he gets this idea.
Other babies must like who's buying this bullshit? Babies. It's baby stuff for babies.
Right.
It's even if it's politics, which is supposed to be advanced topics, it's delivered with the kind of bullshit of Blue's Clues. I only mentioned that because it was in a meme where can you see the coup? Where's the coup, Blue? The coup is like Ukraine in the background, and it's just the still of like Steve going like talking to the audience like, do you see the clue? Do you see it? Do you see the obvious thing?
Oh man. Okay. Moving on.
Don't trust anyone over 30.
But of generations.
That quote is the basis for Logan's Run.
Yeah, I suppose it is, isn't it? Everyone gets
Logan's Run was written like 3 years later.
Yeah.
Something. Which I actually read. It's a short book.
Is it?
Totally different than the movie.
It was a decent movie.
Yeah, it's different. The book is different actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, because they do kill everyone at 30. But it's not isolated. It's not an isolated dome society. It is like a world state.
I see.
Where because some dystopias are just like a certain demographic has a revolution and does like genocide, or they're Stalin, at least cartoon Stalin.
Sure.
And in this case, the young people took over the world because they were more numerous as the demographics were showing, and they killed everyone over 30. Which is just like a Canadian show called 2030, I think. I don't know if it had a fuller name, but it was this teen sci-fi show that was really good to me. It's really good because there's this certain moment in the show where like most of the show you have this administrator who's like the big bad guy,
Sure.
the bureaucratic dystopian tyrant. But she's just doing her job. And following the rules and enforcing the strict society. But there's this moment where like the worst guys, like the conspiracy that's above them, releases of disease or something, and it's not killing anyone, but it just makes everyone really sick, I guess. And she gets it, and she's desperately trying to like find a solution, and like, and she does, like, she cares about everyone. She doesn't want everyone to be sick. She doesn't, not just for the sake of the society, I guess, but I mean, it comes across as both. She can care about two things at once, which is sort of kind of like got the gears turning about, like, the despots, they're not all just like, it's not evil for evil's sake, which is like the picture that's painted when I'm taught about the Holocaust.
For sure.
I empathized for this person that until this point, or at least the second season, where there's actually other bad guys above her, where it's like, oh, she's actually a middleman. So she's not the true bad guy. She's sort of stuck in the middle, actually.
Caught in the whole
stuck in the middle.
Whirlwind.
So she's like, she's getting it from both ends. So she's just like exasperated. And she's like this, like,
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one.
2030 is Canadian, I'm sure.
2030.
It was on like Showtime on demand when I like had.
Okay.
It was really fun because it had the main character's little sister. Oh, the main character's like a doctor, and again, like, everyone still graduates at 18, but their life cycle, everyone dies after 30, but it's like a disease that kills everyone. And so the brother wants to help cure it. Part of it, but he's slowly figuring out that, like, actually the cure, there is no effort to cure it or something, or I forget exactly the machinations, but
that's cool.
They have this the punishment for getting out of line is getting genetically remodified, getting GR'd, and basically it's like kind of a lobotomy. You get turned into someone simple, and you're a janitor. And this happens to his little sis, who's like, show him playing a cello, but it's like electronic cello, so it's futuristic, but it's like, oh wait, these things really exist, but like, she's playing electric cello. But I never seen one before, so it was like, ooh, that's really futuristic. And I've tried to find it, but of course the internet doesn't always provide everything, which is actually kind of the letdown of the internet.
Yeah,
it's like, it's supposed to be everything, but I can't find it.
The world at your
There's a
fingertips.
lot of shows that actually just because I don't know, it was post 2000, I think, so it must be digital enough.
You'd think it'd be somewhere. Yeah, interesting to hunt that down. We got a comment here.
Yep.
2 Star Wars guy 94. 2 Star Wars 94 guy asks who owns the channel. This is my channel. Me, Zach. So Dan is my regular guest. We stream together every couple of weeks. And as to whether we play D&D, I like the idea of D&D. Basically, streaming is the main hobby that I got time for. So just never.
I'd like to do D&D.
Yeah.
I have friends, and I should probably go to their public D&D shows. My last roommate next door, in fact, does D&D shows. Whether they're called the Quest Bros, no, Quest Dudes, something like that. But yeah, no, I'm an actual politician / political organizer, so yeah. I don't have time.
Yeah,
I'd like to.
It seems fun.
It's sort of a retirement thing for me, I'll do these things when I know that my neighborhood is at least half socialized or something, have a goal like that. Enough that it's going to, the momentum is there, and it's on its way to being full.
I think that's a good plan. But yeah, I've never played it. I like RPGs, whether they're, just on paper, or tabletop, or video games, whatever. I've not ever devoted the time to it. But thanks for the questions.
But you know what I spend thousands of hours on? Paradox games. So you can hit me up for Hearts of Iron 4. That's more my solo thing. So.
Yeah. There you go.
Which I'm on that crack again.
Yep. And now I just checked recently. I think I'm up to 1,500 hours or more playing The Witcher 3. So that I stream that too, though. So that's
1,500.
Something like that. It's a lot. It's a lot of hours.
Really?
I don't know.
The
how
Witcher is that long?
Well,
I mean, 150 hours.
No, I'll look it up right now. In fact,
Steam says 1500.
oh, look it
Because
up.
I
It
guess
might be
I'm
even
approaching.
more.
I'm approaching that with Hearts of Iron, but that's over like 6 years or more or
Let's
longer.
see. Oh
7
boy,
years.
that's embarrassing. I was off by half. I've in total played 3,530 hours of The Witcher 3, but I've gone through it basically.
How's there that much content?
I've gone through it twice
It's
almost.
an RPG. It's a regular RPG, right?
Yeah, so I've played by myself ahead through a lot of the quests, and now I'm going through it again on the stream. So I guess that's why. But I don't know how I played that long. It doesn't.
I view it as just a regular open world game, right? So
It is. Yeah, there's quests. You got to get.
usually
through it.
that's like 100-hour experience.
It's a big world
at most, but like
big world.
when I play Zero Dawn or
Sure.
which I guess is 50 or something. I didn't measure it, but I know it's not more than that.
But
I know just how long. It's mostly because of how old I was as a preteen or something. That playing Tales of Symphonia was one of the longest games I'd ever played, and now it's actually kind of quaint that it's not that long. But it felt really long because it was at that point I never played anything that took more than 10 hours or something,
Sure.
and this took 50. So it's just like it was just so long, and I was like, wow, this just keeps going. Now, well, once you know actually how long it is, it doesn't feel so long, or something, or maybe things took
Yeah.
longer when you're younger. Which
Maybe.
couldn't be the case.
those
Anyway,
kind-
I'm not an MMO player, so I don't have something that racks up that many hours. But Paradox is kind of close. It's yeah.
I think a big part of The Witcher though too was that I had a really slow computer before, so everything was pretty laggy. So it would take me a long time just
okay.
get anywhere.
Yeah.
Now I have a better computer, so
And to be
breezing through
clear,
it.
with the Paradox games, what really helps me like go over like the 500-hour mark with any of them is the mods. There are mods that are
Sure.
basically like a whole other game. So it's just there's using the base of a Paradox game, but then you have a mod that's like literally another game. So technically, me playing like all the Hearts of Iron mods, it's more like I played 5 games at 300 hours each or something. Though the Equestria War is probably that's 500, 600 easy. Because that's the one I'm back on. Because they keep adding new content for it. Even after 8 years or whatever. It's insane.
That's amazing. Usually franchises don't get added to nearly that long. You maybe
this is
2,
a
3 years
mod
or
for
more.
Hearts of Iron 4, which is maybe getting to the end of its lifespan, but Paradox
Yeah.
keeps putting out new add-ons
That's
for it,
amazing.
actually. No, Equestria War
That
is
is
the
very
My
interesting.
Little Ponies mod for Hearts of Iron, but is so expansive and well developed that it's its own game. And it kind of does what kind of everyone kind of wants certain Hearts of Iron mods to be, which is that you have a continent where it's sort of a free-for-all where you can pick any country and you can kind of everyone can be expansionist and kind of take everyone over, but like any one country can do this and have their own path or story to it. Like they've written a shit ton for this, and it's impressive. It's very impressive.
That
And
is
it's
impressive.
a lot of content. And I was just replaying just certain countries and trying to work out like it really is like 100 games in one.
Wow.
With just using this base, which is like how D&D works actually. So of course you can spend half your life playing D&D or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Which, you know, I get it. I can understand, and certainly all the different podcasts make it look very alluring and fun.
Yeah. Seems cool in theory. I think we're gonna have to wrap things up.
We're gonna have to wrap up. All right, we'll do the rest of the Yuppie to Hippie to Yuppie, because that's a good video. That's why
It
I
is a good
saved
video.
it.
I'm very intrigued by
Why
it
I
so
saved
far.
it for so
I
long.
like the way
and he
that
does a
it's
lot of
laid
stuff
out.
like that. So the guy is consistent.
That's awesome.
With video essays like this.
I will go subscribe right now.
Another I could show more that we could actually maybe is a really good discussion starter is this channel called The Feral Historian.
Oh, I think I've come across that person.
And I may have shared a video already on the stream in the past, but he's essentially like a moderate guy who, since he's not a leftist, he's sort of kind of, but he's smart about the way he talks about he talks about sci-fi, but he sort of critiques some of the leftist aspirational parts of sci-fi, kind of like it's not so hot. And in some ways, like he sort of misrepresents certain sci-fi, because I actually had to re-ask someone who's like, hey, does The Dispossessed really have this kind of theme to it? Because he was implying like it had a theme where the commune was as restrictive as any other totalizing force. But that's just the way a moderate sees everything. They see us leftists as just as totalist and totalitarian, and restrictive of the individual. And I'm like, is that really the case in The Dispossessed? And someone who had read it said like, no, it's not like that at all.
I think I talked about it on stream.
I think I'll find and save, and I'll share that on. I'll add it to the playlist of his. He does a comparison between Star Trek's Federation and the United Humanity of Starship Troopers.
That sounds super familiar. I know. I'm looking at his channel now. I know we've covered him for something before. I just wonder what it is.
Yeah, they're not too long, so they're good. It was probably one of his like Star Trek, taking Star Trek to task. Like Star Trek actually isn't a leftist utopia. That's the sort of like main argument they kind of like when he's talking about Star Trek.
Sure.
It's fascinating. It's something to consider. I don't really agree fully,
but yeah.
Because it's sort of like simplifying republicanism, or it's just taking for the fact that the full governmental organization of the Federation is not explained, and the world building isn't there with Star Trek. Like there's a lot left open-ended. And if you want to do a lot of world building, you can, but that's not what any of the shows are about, because the shows are about exploring things outside the Federation. And it's only sometimes they're interacting with the Starfleet bureaucracy.
Yeah, that part.
So he's like, it's a bureaucracy, which means it's like a dystopian totalitarian regime.
Yeah.
Because you don't see democracy there. Because there isn't.
Must be.
You don't see the admirals voting on anything unless they do, but it's the admirals and not all the other officers. Like,
right.
There's no mass participation.
Must be an oligarchy then.
But how is Earth's United Earth government work? You know?
Sure. It looks like the one that we have covered is Star Trek: Jobs, Money, and Replicators.
Oh, okay. So that probably wasn't.
Looks like we haven't.
That probably wasn't one of his critical ones. Then I think that was more just as a discussion. But yeah, that must have been
anything else. Fair game. We could certainly cover that. Sounds good. Any big things you want to plug before we head out?
It's all just me writing my Oh yeah, no. It was another thing I can do next time is I made I used DeepSync to write the outline. I had it write an outline for a anti-capitalist platform and a post-capitalist platform and an eco-socialist platform. So I was kind of comparing those two outcomes to each other. And like what was different. So I could do that as a section for next time.
That'd be fun.
And I'm using that to sort of fill out my platform, because I'm trying to doing double duty here, where I'm writing a full local eco-socialist platform while I'm writing my personal city council platform, which needs to be really it needs to be more specific and not so broad and heady.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
I want to get accomplished. Sure.
My friend kind of does a draft where he just puts green jobs, on there. And I'm like, I don't want to just put green jobs. That can mean so many goddamn things and they're nothing. It means nothing.
Right.
But public works and jobs is more specific, because it's saying public jobs. We need more public jobs, because if And that goes back to more like, do I just fight for single payer in campaign and crusade for that? Because that would solve our budget issues, and then we could have all this stuff happen. Because otherwise it's not worth me trying to do anything else, which is why most other city council people are sort of left tweaking ordinances, which is not a bad thing. We're tweaking our ordinance on active transportation, it's called, because there were more paragraphs about regulating horses than bicycles.
That's funny.
It actually limited the speed of bicycles to 8 miles per hour.
Those
even
crazy
on the streets.
bicyclists.
Even on the streets. And of course, there was no language about other motorized transportation that isn't a car. So now that we have all these other things with motors in them, there's a category made for that. That they're not allowed on sidewalks. Bicycles that aren't motorized can go on bicycles, provided that they're not going above 5 miles per hour and following a certain decorum, which is laid out, which doesn't exist in the rules now, which is why the police literally can't enforce anything, or they can't, like, there's nothing to enforce, but the rules are actually that, like, bicycles shouldn't even be out at all. You know, and that they're banned from the parks, that they're not allowed, like, you're not allowed to ride all this time. The whole time I've been riding a bike, I've been doing it illegally. That's so hilarious.
Parks breaking
because I've been
the law,
riding for
the
the park
scoff
paths
law.
and all that. I taught myself how to ride on a park path, and the city ordinance said that's illegal.
That's funny.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Yeah, thanks
As
for being
Yakko
on.
Warner would say.
Yeah, yeah. All right, looking forward to next time. See you then.
Good night.
All right, we have come to the end of our show, friends. Thanks to everyone who stopped by. Thanks to those of you who are watching after the fact. One thing I did want to mention real quick before I head out of here myself. It looks like you guys have been doing as I was asking. Let me just share it real quick. And you've been going to my Teachers Pay Teachers site. I finally got my first sale. You know, pretty big deal there. I made a whole $1.35 off it, but hey, it's something. Someone actually liked my stuff enough to pay for it. So real appreciated that. And it was the political spectrum. One of the things I think it's probably the thing I'm most proud of that I've made so far. My PowerPoint slide on the slides on the political spectrum. But more important than that, even though, because I was like, oh, one sale over all this time. I guess that's something. It's not super huge. But then I looked and I saw there's this whole other tab called activity, which includes the downloads of things and the views of things and that sort of thing. And those numbers are actually not bad. As we look at the downloads here. So I have a bunch of free stuff on my site, and we got 13 downloads of that one, 4 of another. I think my highest one is 20 downloads of the presidential campaign poster study, which covers all the presidential campaign posters that I could get my hands on, including a bunch of third-party candidates, a bunch of obscure stuff, a bunch of the people that didn't end up winning the presidency. But every administration that put out a campaign, and there were a few actually that did not campaign. I want to say it was perhaps Hayes who didn't campaign because he got into the presidency from the president dying in office, and then he did not run the campaign after that. But everyone that I could find and get my hands on, I included in there. So I got a lot of cool vintage stuff. But yeah, you guys have been doing a lot of downloads, and I assume that at least some of it is pushed from me just asking you to. So I do appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Keep telling any teacher friends or family you may have about my site, if you please. Go to my shop right now. Give you the link for it. Mr. Zach's Class is what it is called. And please make sure also, if you wouldn't mind, to follow and maybe give me a review, because I think reviews are going to be also very helpful in steering more people to what I've put a whole lot of effort into. creating some good social studies resources, stuff you don't see too often, and useful things. I think my most recent one, I have done a calendar of all the holidays that I could find from every major religion that I could find. So, you know, the big Middle Eastern ones, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, but as well as Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism. We even have some Celtic pagan holidays thrown in there, and then just secular holidays as well. So all in all, there's about 110 different holidays, and they're just arranged in a PowerPoint, or it's actually a Google slideshow of slides, each one coming with a little blurb about each one. And then as much as I could, I found videos at least 2 different levels. So we have a very basic one for like elementary school students, and then a little more advanced one for middle and high schoolers, to give a little more context to the holiday. And I even included the various history months, like Black History Month and Hispanic Heritage Month and Native American or Indigenous, it is Native American Heritage Month. All the ones that I could find included a little starter slide for each of those to kick off each month for your class. And yeah, put a lot of time and effort into it. So I appreciate you taking a look. That one is a paid one though, because I have, like I said, I would probably put close to 100 hours into just finding the best stuff that I could find. Yeah, check it out, Mr. Zach's class. Tell your friends, tell any teacher you happen to pass on the street. I don't mind, as long as they come here, give me a follow, download a few things. Even if it's free stuff, it still helps more people find my stuff, puts me higher in their algorithm, because that apparently is what drives all attention these days. Algorithms. Isn't it nice? Computers doing our searches for us before we even know it. Anyway, though, that is how it is played. So that's what I have to work with. All right. In the interest of not continuing to ramble, I'm going to sign off for tonight. Like I said, appreciate y'all coming by, and I will see you tomorrow night. I think since I missed last night because I had some homework to finish up for grad school here, gonna try and stream tomorrow night. We'll see how it goes. Probably gonna be a short stream because I have to take Amanda to her class. But in the meantime, while she's in class, I'll race back home, dependent on weather too, because we still have a weather alert just issued. I'll take a look at that later, though. Oh boy. All right. Anyway, see you tomorrow night. I think it'll be more of the S.J. Witcher series. So I look forward to that. We're in a good portion of that story. Get into some exciting stuff, some bigger quests.